Hi, I'm Jeremy from Tech Central. In these videos, I'll show you how to use the Affinity Design software that I used to create this poster. This is Tech Tips from Tech Central. Hi, and welcome to this introductory tutorial to Affinity Designer, which is a vector graphics tool used for graphic design and vector illustration. If you watched my Adobe Illustrator video, you'll know that vectors are math-based. They're infinitely scalable. I don't really understand all the math behind them, but I know how they work. Affinity has Photo and Designer, just like Adobe has Photoshop and Illustrator. Photoshop and Illustrator are very, very different. Affinity tried to make their programs similar across the board, so there's not a lot of relearning if you know Affinity Photo. And there's not a lot of relearning if you know Photoshop to go to Affinity Photo or Designer. So start by making a new document. We're going to make a business card. You can choose from any of these templates. These are my presets. You can choose from the presets here, or you can copy my settings if you'd like to follow along. The settings I entered include a margin and a bleed. You can enable and disable the margin and bleed in the View menu. Okay, let's start with a rectangle. Grab the Rectangle tool, here. Notice the cursor will snap to the guide. If you don't want it to snap to the guide, you have to hold Alt. Draw out a rectangle, here, and then another down here. I'm making my rectangles go beyond the bounds of the document. I'll show you why in a moment. The first color that you choose will become a global color that can be edited, and it will edit everywhere else that global color is used. Now let's add some text. You could use either of the text tools, but I like the artistic text tool. Type the job title that you would like to have on the business card. Now let's change the font to something we like. I like Montserrat. You can get it from Google Fonts. Resize the text how you like it. I'm going to make it go beyond the borders of the rectangle. I'm using Control and the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Hold Alt to adjust in smaller increments. But be careful, if you hold Alt, then click and drag your object, it will make a duplicate. Undo with Control Z. You don't have to do this next part. I'm just going to make another rectangle to demonstrate the next step. And then I'll change the color here. Now, change the text layer's blend mode to erase all the way at the bottom. Then drop it into that rectangle that it's sitting on. Now you can see through that rectangle where the text is. It's really not something that's necessary for this design, but I wanted to show you how to do it. Alright, I can make this into a background if I want to change the color. And then you can make this color a global color by clicking this button. I don't know. I don't really like it. I'm just going to turn it off. Now select both of the rectangles and make sure you have one of the shape tools on. I'll just pick the rectangle. Then up here, change the corner to rounded. You can adjust the amount right here. Now you can see that both of these rectangles have rounded corners. And this is the reason that I made the rectangle go beyond the border. Because if you were to put it up to the border right here, you could see the roundness, and I wanted it to look as if it's just coming from the side. You may notice the text squash whenever you resize the box like this. And squashing and stretching text is a big design no-no. You can use constraints to make sure that anything inside of an object doesn't resize, or resizes accordingly. You can find the Constraints panel with all the other panels under View and Studio. Turn off the arrows in the middle here to tell it not to resize vertically or horizontally. Then we can select these bars to tell it to stay the same distance from the top and the sides at all times. Oops, I did that to the whole box, so it didn't affect anything. Make sure that the layer that you want to constrain is the one that is selected, not the folder or group that it is contained in, but the layer itself. There we go. That works. Remember, duplicate an object by holding Alt or Option and clicking and dragging that object. This will be a spot for your name. I'm going to do the same thing and push the text just beyond the border of the rectangle. Then we can change the constraints so that it stays on the bottom and on the side. You can move that around and see that they stay where they should stay. Some fonts have many different line widths that you can use. You can change the thickness of the font right here. Let's do that to add a little bit of variation. Then we can copy with Ctrl or Command C and paste with Ctrl or Command V. This will be the spot for the phone number. And again, keeping with the style that we've set, I'm going to push it just beyond the border of the rectangle. Now this text box is not set inside of another thing to affect just that. It's outside with all of the layers. So it's still set to erase, and it's erasing all of the layers below it. You can drag it into the object that you want it to affect, and it will only affect that object. I still don't really like having a color in the background, so I'll just turn that off. I can drag in an image or a logo that I'd like to add to this just by dragging from the file, dropping it into the document. Resize the image and place it where you'd like it. Now let's duplicate the phone number and we'll alter it so it can be our email address. It's still set to erase, so we'll have to change that in the blend mode. Enter your email and then adjust it how you'd like it. Since we have curved rectangles, I'm going to inset it a little bit so that it doesn't look jagged. For the next part, grab the test frame tool. It's nested under the artistic text tool. Let's make a bulleted list to put in here. You can turn on the bullet points right here. We'll just say some of the things that you can do in Text Central. Learn, design, and play. Make sure your font is consistent or complementary to the other fonts that you've used in your design. If you need to play with spacing or leading or kerning, it's all right here in the Characters panel. I don't really like the bullet points, so I'm going to get rid of them and center the text and change the color, and then we can alter the size and emphasize play. Okay, we made the informational side of a business card. Now let's make the other side. Grab the Artboard tool here and drag over the canvas that we have existing. It'll snap to the corners. Then you can duplicate that artboard just like you would a layer. Let's drag that up here. Then we can delete the things we don't need that were copied from the original artboard. We can enlarge the logo so it really just displays what the company is. And actually, I do want the same rectangles that we used in the other side. So I'll copy and paste those onto the upper artboard and then delete the text inside of them. Group those together and put them behind the logo. And I don't really like this overlapping, so let's put a border around the text. We can use layer styles or layer effects to do this, which is something you can do in Photoshop, but you cannot do in Illustrator, at least that I've found. But you can do it in Affinity Designer. So it's cool. It's like a mixture of Photoshop and Illustrator, like the best of both worlds, to keep it user-friendly. There, we have a border. Now I'll adjust the elements over here to get them to where I like them. And don't forget to name your artboards. There we go. We made a very, very simple business card. Now let's save it. We should have done that in the beginning, but I forgot. Let's save now. There's a couple different ways that you can export. You can go to File and Export, and then tell it to export both artboards, or you can do one at a time. But I like to go to the Export persona up here. It'll rearrange your workspace to be specifically tailored to exporting. And look over here in Slices. You can make your own slices by going to the Layers panel over there, but in this case, it detected our artboards are probably the things that we want to export. So it made those slices for us, and it disabled the background. If the background was selected, it would export both of them as a single image. Right now it's set to export as a single PNG, but to make sure that our document isn't exporting with invisible spots, like see-through for like web images, I'm just going to change that to a JPEG. You can do that up here. And you can see that it changed all of the instances to JPEG exports. Now, when you click on Export Slices, you can export each of these at the same time as individual images. It doesn't matter what you name them in the file up here. It will always name it whatever the slice is named. So there we go. We made a business card in Affinity Designer. There are a lot more things that you can do with this program. I just wanted to show you the basic, easy stuff, working with shapes, dropping in pictures, changing fonts. Real easy, but it's a starting point. And it's a really cool software. It can do most of the things that Adobe Illustrator can do with no monthly cost, just a one-time payment. And I think this is as easy or easier to use than Photoshop. Just play around, use these tools that I showed you, play with other things, and watch other instructional videos. It's just cool software. If there's anything you would like us to make a video about, let us know. You can leave a comment or you can email us at the address below. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more helpful tech tips from Tech Central.